Good evening. My name is Nathaniel Webb, and I will be doing my presentation for professional selling on the First Amendment, entitled An Appeal to Reason, Free to Speak, Not Freedom from Offense. To start this, I know my subject's very broad, and I'm going to try to keep it as succinct as possible. But to begin this, I'll start with a quote. "Without freedom of thought, there can be no such thing as wisdom, and no such thing as public liberty without freedom of speech." Is by Benjamin Franklin. The main reason I started this is because of examples like this. In earlier, a few weeks ago, there's a big news story on Reason.com where a gentleman was able to get signatures on a petition to repeal the First Amendment. This was at Yale University. In this day and age, it becomes synonymous and commonplace for students to take offense with everything. Now, I don't mind people taking offense. The main thing is when that offense becomes the act to censor by either students or by government or any institution whatsoever. Henceforth, my thesis statement. Freedom of speech is a fundamental right to anybody in the United States. Freedom of speech does not mean, no, you are not free from being offended. You have a right, as per the Constitution and one of its 5 parts in the First Amendment, that you have the right to free speech, and that the government for the most part has no right to censor that. You have a right to express an opinion. You have a right to record that opinion in other articles, whether it be the freedom of press or freedom to assemble or freedom to petition. What this does not guarantee you, though, is, in this day and age, a safe space for you to keep others out, or for you not to hear what you don't want to hear, or in most cases, opposite opinion. The freedom of speech is defined as the right of people to express their opinions publicly without government interference, or subject to laws against libel, incitement to violence, or rebellion. So you are free to express his opinion as long as you're not slandering somebody, or you're not expressing, say, violence against a person or institution. As I mentioned earlier with that Yale example, there has been a rash of censorship or speech codes on campus. These are just a few examples, but in Wesleyan newspaper, Wesleyan College, they received a cut in funding due to a op-ed piece speaking negatively on Black Lives Matter movement, which even after the newspaper was apologetic and made changes or recanted the article, there were still protests talking about the newspaper and saying how it was hostile to minorities. In Missouri, the Black Lives Matter movement, there was a professor who worked to silence free speech. Her picture is on the right there, but she actually worked to censor a student reporter who was covering the event, using the phrase that we all come to know is, "I need muscle over here." Excuse me, that's my dog. There was also a protest due to a Yale letter from a administrator there challenging another letter urging students not to wear culturally offensive outfits for Halloween. This was met with demonstrations as well. Once again, students claiming that there was a hostility over race. Now, I'm not trying to take aside any of this, but what I am going against is actual censorship on these issues. Which leads me to this point. While this was maybe speech codes that are going on college, there's actually criminal cases for people who have spoken who for speech. One was a woman named Bahar Mustafa, who was a cultural diversity officer in the Goldsmiths school, who was arrested for tweets that included a hashtag on Twitter for hashtag kill all white men. Another gentleman was arrested for harassment when he openly disagreed with feminists who were later shown to want to smear and openly admonish him and shame him, so to speak. These are actually people who were arrested for speech that was deemed offensive, but not necessarily those who promoted actual violence or hatred, actual violence towards individuals. My conclusion overall is, if liberty means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they do not want to hear. This is written by George Orwell. We all want to, again, I'm trying to speak on a very broad issue in a very minimal amount of time, but at the same token, it's important that we all understand that freedom of speech is a very much an inherent right that we all have, especially as Americans. Whether we like we can hate a certain someone's opinion, but it doesn't mean that we have the right to either arrest them or censor their opinions or beliefs. If anything, it may challenge our own beliefs and force us to be able to debate better or defend our own opinions that much harder. I thank you for your time, and I wish you a good night.